Alright, so I'm back once again with something a little different this time. I've shown some of my photos before on some of my videos, but this is a video that's going to be dedicated entirely to one specific roll of film I shot. And rather than just show it, I think I'm going to go through and explain some of it. So for a little background, this was shot on my Nikon S3 with the Komura 35mm f2.8 lens. And this is the first roll of color film I actually shot on that lens. And this was an expired roll of film. It was a roll of Kodak Gold 200. That I don't know exactly when it expired. It was sometime in the late 90s, the very early 2000s, so it was at least 20 years expired by the time I used it. It had not been especially well stored or refrigerated. I think it had been left in a closet somewhere. And I decided to just shoot it at 64 ISO and have it developed at 200. And I think the results I ended up getting were actually pretty impressive, especially when you consider the age of the film. So I'm going to go through these images. There's 39 of them, 38 and a half I would argue, but here's the first one. That's kind of the half image. This was sort of the original image on the, or the first image on the roll, and it had that sort of burn from being pulled out. I always hate it when that happens. I try to avoid that, but it always seems to happen. I don't know if it's me or the people that developing lab, but happens a lot. The next image is one from a little rest stop area. I love the colors here. It's not that great of an image, but I really like the colors, and I think it shows that expired film, if used properly, can give you some really nice results. We got a couple here from a local town. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but again, I think you get pretty nice results. Some of the colors are a little off, but not too bad at the end of the day. And these are actually from a ghost town. I think these came out a lot better. I think the lighting was a little bit better, but you just have some very nice looking images. The colors are all pretty nice. Maybe the saturation might be a little off on a few of them, but I kind of like it. And this is technically a ghost town. People still live here, but there's not really many amenities, so they consider it a ghost town. You got that neat little old house. I believe it's abandoned, but it has that really old front gate with some faded sign on it. And then you can see above the door there's an old, what looks like an old oil lamp hung up there. And I find that kind of fascinating, and that's why I took the photo. Not even sure if anybody lives there. It's another abandoned building. Had kind of a nice look, all those old boards just kind of slowly rotting away. This is a fire I saw somewhere in a nearby town. Just snapped a couple images as I was walking by. Not the most exciting stuff in the world, but, you know, still kind of interesting. This is a pretty interesting one. This is actually a World War II vintage V1 rocket. And there's actually a lot of things like that in this area around the kind of Arizona, New Mexico, El Paso area. They brought a lot of those things over here after the end of the war and used them for testing, and a lot of them ended up being the basis for American cruise missiles and American rockets that were used by NASA. And this appears to be one of the only intact V1s I've seen. And yes, it doesn't have the wings on it, but I believe the wings are on the trailer underneath it. But I thought that was really cool, and I took this photo through a fence. This is in kind of a fenced-in area near a space museum. And somehow I managed to actually not get any of the chain link fence in there, which is pretty impressive. And I really love the colors. Lots of yellows, maybe a little too yellowy, but I think it looks really nice, and it kind of matches that desert aesthetic. This is that same storage facility. There's some other type of rocket there. I don't know exactly what. You can see it says U.S. Army on it. Took that photo from across the train tracks. Thought it looked kind of interesting. And this is actually a little tiny train. They have a train museum. That's a park where the train runs through. I just kind of like the look of that truck with the kind of vagrants living out of it. You can see somebody's arm hanging out of the front and something hanging out of the back window. I thought that was kind of an interesting image right there. I wish I'd gotten a little closer, but, you know, it is what it is. This is the actual building for the train museum. They do the maintenance on those little tiny trains in there, and you can kind of see the tracks winding around it. I just kind of like that look, almost like a train's about to break through the wall right there. This is apparently the world's largest pistachio. It's made out of fiberglass, of course, but kind of interesting. It's a mountain somewhere. I don't even know where. This is pretty interesting to me. So this is an abandoned factory, but you'll notice there's a very dramatic lens flare. And I noted in my previous review that the Komura didn't really seem to flare very much, and its flare characteristics seemed a lot more subdued than a lot of the Nikon lenses I'd used. But I don't know if it's the color film or just the specific lighting I got, but you'll notice that there is a very dramatic flare here. And not only is it a very big flare, but it also has sort of a rainbow effect in it, and I find that kind of interesting. I know a lot of people wouldn't like that. A lot of people would say this ruins the image. I mean, it wasn't really a great image to begin with, as you can probably tell. But I find that flare very interesting. I have not seen many flares with that kind of characteristic. I think I've seen one like that somewhere, but I can't for the life of me remember where. And I find that kind of beautiful in a way. And there's another one, slightly less dramatic. I kind of prefer that one. That's the old factory right there, that abandoned factory, a little underexposed, but nothing too impressive. This is an interesting water tower right near the factory. I just kind of like the look of it. But you will notice there's a little bit of vignetting in the upper corners. You see that in a couple of the images, but just not too many of them. So I guess the lens does vignette just a little bit, but I'm guessing it probably has to be at a very specific aperture. I would think this was probably shot closed down quite a bit, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. So I'm going to have to study that a little bit more. Same water tower. Again, you see just a little bit of vignetting. This is a shot from on top of a hill. I just kind of like that view of the city. Nothing too impressive, but the mountains over there are actually in Mexico, and the city itself is El Paso. And this is a part of a church. I really like, the colors here are a little bit off. They're kind of undersaturated, I guess you could say, but I still like the look of it. It has a very interesting look. I kind of like the composition. I think it was a little off. I would have preferred to have the that sort of crest on the building go up a little higher towards the top of the frame. But I'll blame that on the rangefinder and pretend like that's not my fault at all and just move on to the next image. So that again is, this one probably has the best colors. They're a bit more subdued, but I think they're the most real to life colors on this entire roll. But again, kind of an unimpressive image. I'm not even really sure why I took that one in retrospect. That's another hill right there. I don't know why I took that one either. I guess I was just trying to get through the roll. So this is a shot I really like. This is kind of behind that same church, and you have this kind of road where they're doing some upgrades and kind of some construction work, and it leads up towards that little gazebo. And the gazebo is actually where I took that first that first image that had the view of the city, and you can kind of see into Mexico. Overall, I just like the composition of this one. I like the fact you have that gazebo kind of the upper right, and then you have the kind of pile of rocks at the lower left, and the road takes up almost the entire base of the image. If anything, I wish I'd kind of trimmed off a little bit more at the top of the image. I think that would have given it a bit more balance, but I like this one. I kind of like the colors. Again, it's the saturation's a bit odd, but I think it kind of works. And this was taken in the same area. It's just some strange desert plant, but I kind of like the look of it. You will notice that again, you see up in the sky, it's not quite vignetting, but it's a little bit darker. It's that kind of, I don't think it's any sort of shutter effect or anything. I think that's just how the camera was exposing that day. I don't really know how to explain it. I know there's some term for it, but I can't think of it. And this is actually the U.S.-Mexican border wall. This is only about 3 miles from where I live. And I know this is not a remarkable picture, but there's just something about that wall I feel like is, even though it's not very beautiful, I feel like it's kind of worthy of photographing and documenting more. And this was just a very brief attempt at it that was not very successful. This is just sort of a parking lot area, not too far from where I live. You'll notice there's a little bit more vignetting with it, which again, I think this probably would have been shot a little bit more closed down. So I'm kind of surprised there's vignetting at that aperture, around probably f/16, I'm guessing. I don't really love the composition here, but again, I kind of like the colors. This is some little small town somewhere nearby. I don't remember where. I have no idea off the top of my head. But I just love these old buildings. All this stuff was abandoned, but you have those kind of old hand-painted signs, which aren't really that old, because one of them says wireless connection, so I'm guessing that can't be much more than 15 or 20 years old. But I just love that kind of hand-painted facade, and you have those old wrought iron sort of security bars and the old doors, and all that stuff is abandoned, but it's still kind of lively in a way. And I like that look. That's a look you see around here in the Southwest a whole lot, but you don't always see that same style everywhere else of that sort of lively abandoned building. This is on the side. This is just sort of a window that shows the schedule of a long closed barber shop, if I remember correctly, and just some kind of plants that are slowly overgrowing the area. This is a little canal area for irrigation. I took a photo of this just because I'd never seen it full of water before. Most of the year they're completely empty, and they're about 4 or 5 feet deep. And this one is full, and the side nearest me probably has at least 3 feet of water, and maybe more. And the side beyond has probably over 4 feet of water in it. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you have that little river that runs through there, when normally this is just a big ditch. And I just kind of like the look of it. The water was actually flowing quite a bit, which also kind of surprised me. So I was just kind of taken aback by that, and I took this photo. This is just a strange truck parked in front of a place. I just kind of like the look of it. I tried to get some clouds in there, but I think I probably should have aimed a little higher. Again, I would say that's one of the hazards of using a rangefinder, but not too bad of an image. I really like the colors, and I think the overall composition is nothing too exciting, but it's still a lot better than a lot of the stuff you see on Instagram. This was obviously a Texas flag. This is at a rest stop. This one has some of the worst colors. I don't know why they're so weird. They almost look undersaturated, but at the same time, the flag looks kind of overexposed. I don't know how that happened exactly, but it's a very unusual look. I'm not a big fan of that one, but it is what it is. And there's the wife right there. That was the last shot of the roll, and I would argue the best. Again, I really love the colors here. I even kind of like the way she's looking off to the side. Just an interesting look. You got a really nice depth of field there. I don't think this was really shot wide open. I think this was probably shot around like f8, maybe even a little closer to f11. Can't quite remember, but probably in that range. And you get a very nice dramatic depth of field. I was pretty close to it right there. I was probably around 3 or 4 feet away, so somewhere around the minimum focusing distance of the lens. But you can see it does produce a very nice depth of field and very nice colors. So all in all, I gotta say, once again, I'm very impressed by the Komura lens. I definitely want to shoot more color on it. And I kind of enjoyed going through and talking about this and showing all my images. I wouldn't mind doing this again. But it's not every day you get a nice roll where every image is worth reviewing or talking about. I know some of them on here were kind of duds, but still, this was kind of a nice little exercise. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you want to see any more videos like this.